Hitler killed 6 million. Stalin killed around 9. This man killed an estimated 45 million in just 4 years. And most people watching this right now have never even heard his name. Don't look away, because what you're about to hear is the story of how one promise became the largest grave ever dug by a single idea. The year is 1958. China is a nation broken by a century of war, hunger, and humiliation. And finally, it has a leader who promises them the future. His name is Mao Zedong. He stands before millions, and he makes them a promise so bold it sounds like destiny itself. In 15 years, he says, China will overtake the West. No more weakness, no more hunger, a new world, built by our own hands. He calls it the Great Leap Forward, and it will become the deadliest 4 years in the history of the human race. The plan was simple, and it was insane. Hundreds of millions of peasants were torn from their farms and forced into massive collective communes. They no longer owned their land, their tools, their homes, not even the pots they cooked their food in. To prove that China could outproduce the West, Mao ordered the people to make steel, not in factories, but in their own backyards. So they melted everything they had, their pots, their pans, their farm tools, even the knives they ate with, fed into the fire. And what did they produce? Worthless, brittle metal, garbage, unusable. An entire nation had destroyed the very tools it needed to survive, to make steel that wasn't even steel. And while they hammered useless metal through the night, the harvest sat in the fields, ripe, golden, and rotting, because there was no one left to bring it in. But this is where the tragedy turns into something far darker. Mao demanded results. He demanded record harvests. And in his China, to fail Mao was to die. So the local officials did the only thing that could save their own lives. They lied. Village after village reported harvests 2 times, 5 times, 10 times bigger than anything they had actually grown, each one terrified of being the one who reported failure. And the lies climbed all the way to the top. So the government came to collect the state's share of grain based on harvests that did not exist. They took the food, they took the seeds for next year, they took the very last grain in the house from farmers who were already starving to death. And then the hunger came, not the kind you feel when you skip a meal, the kind that empties entire provinces. People ate tree bark, they ate grass, they ate a white clay from the ground that filled the stomach and then killed them slowly from the inside. Whole villages lay down and never got up again. And in the worst of it, parents, driven mad by grief and starvation, made a silent pact with their neighbors to trade children so that no family would have to eat its own. And the punishment for hiding food: men were beaten to death in front of their families for the crime of burying a single handful of grain. For 4 years, the largest famine in all of human history unfolded across China, and the outside world barely knew it was happening. No headlines, no rescue, no mercy, just silence. And the dead. By the time it ended, the death toll was almost beyond belief. Tens of millions of people gone, not from war, not from a weapon, from a policy. You would think a man responsible for this would be finished, stripped of power, put on trial, erased from history. He wasn't. A few years later, with his grip on power slipping, Mao did the unthinkable. He did it again. He called it the Cultural Revolution. He handed power to the young, teenagers, students, children, and he told them to destroy everything old. Old ideas, old culture, old people. Teachers were dragged into the streets and beaten by their own students. Children were forced to denounce their own parents. Neighbors informed on neighbors. Friends destroyed friends. Just to survive one more day. Temples burned. History was smashed. An entire nation was ordered to tear out its own soul. Hundreds of thousands more died in the madness. An entire generation of minds lost, and all of it flowed from one man's word. So what happened to the man at the center of it all? Mao Zedong died in 1976. Old, comfortable, in his own bed, no trial, no prison, no reckoning, nothing. And today, decades later, his face still hangs over Tiananmen Square. His body still rests in a glass tomb, visited by thousands every single day. The man whose policies may have killed more human beings than any war, any plague, any tyrant in recorded history is still, to many, a hero. And here is the most frightening part of all. These deaths did not come from a gun he fired with his own hand, or an army he led into battle. They came from an idea, a promise, a man so certain that he was right, that reality itself was forced to obey, until tens of millions paid for it with their lives. The deadliest chapter in human history was not written in blood on a battlefield. It was written in silence, in lies, in a harvest that rotted while the world looked away. And the only reason it stayed hidden for so long is that no one ever said his name. Now, you know it.